Hey everyone, we recorded this episode 2 days ago, but we really wanted to add something in about what's going on in the country right now. We wanted to take a moment to both acknowledge and profess our support for the Black Lives Matter movement and to say that we are so strongly opposed to the inequality and racism that very clearly exists in this country. This is something that goes far beyond politics and policy. And I want to encourage anyone who wants to get involved to educate themselves on the topic and to be there for those people who need you most. This can be done through donating to any number of the great projects out there, protesting, or listening to those who so badly need to be heard. This is about human lives, and it's something extremely important to us and should matter just as much to every one of you out there.
This is an incredibly important time in our nation's history, and we stand with the Black members of our community against the injustice that goes on. And we strongly encourage people to go self-educate and seek out the educational tools that have been made available, and to find ways to help.
Yeah, two of those resources are the Innocence Project and the ACLU. Links will be included in the description below. This will have resources for donating, petitioning, and educating yourself. We also all been sharing different resources and perspectives on our social media that have helped us. And it's really important to do so because everyone needs to do their part in this time. This is not something that you can't participate in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special quick episode of The Dive, an episode to address the massive news that just came out. Uzi has officially retired. One of the legends of the game, one of the greatest players of all time, is stepping down from competitive play for health reasons. Uzi is one of the players that I think has made this game so special to me. When I think about League of Legends, when I think about international competition, Uzi is one of the pillars of that, right? The only guy I think that's kind of on that level with him, to me, is Faker. Those are the two biggest stars in our game, and rightfully so. He is retiring without having won Worlds, and I think that it's fair to say he's probably the greatest player to never have one.
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is a little surreal just because he's had these on and off periods for so long. You almost felt like I'm sure he'll be okay. He always bounces back, and to have like this official big news is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, for people who have been concerned with other things at the moment, let's update them with the actual news. I have a translated post that Uzi made here, and he talks about the health issues that were the reason for his retirement. It's both because of type 2 diabetes, which he recently has been updated by the doctors, like it cannot get any worse. So he's taking steps to correct his diet and his health in those matters. And everybody knows as well, like Mark's talking about, the on-off kind of schedule that Uzi has been due to hand issues. So he's had a lot of health issues that have led to this retirement. And it really is crazy, just to re-emphasize what Zale's opening with here, because Uzi is one of the longest still playing, until very recently, members of professional league. And he is also considered this kind of holy grail of marksman play, of AD carry play. Probably the best individual laner of all time, probably the best mechanics. People can have small arguments on those, but there's no way they're going to discount Uzi completely. So I just think it is, it's such a big event that when something like this happens, you start to think, now it's time for us to open up our Hall of Fame. Why don't we have a Hall of Fame yet? Because Uzi is, if
here's your introductory
retiring,
member.
Like, all right, well, we're putting him in the Hall of Fame, right? Wait, we don't have one? All right, let's make one.
Well, let's make one. Yeah.
I think this is probably the biggest retirement in league history so far.
For sure.
Yeah, because like Stanley and Toys and some of the people who have won season 2, season 1, Shushei and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Even our boy Kobe, who has participated in
second biggest
WCGs.
for Kobe. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, there's a lot of people you could probably put on the list of people who are waiting at the door for the Hall of Fame when it opens, but Uzi's going to cut that whole line. Yeah, he's cutting the whole line to get in there.
Excuse me, pardon me, Uzi. You may have heard of me, man. Something I saw tweeted out, and I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but I actually got really sad when I realized Uzi's never going to have a world skin. He's never going to have a skin in the game. I want an Uzi skin. I think that would be so cool, to commemorate a player in that way, whether it is through, the Hall of Fame or something like that. If there was like a Hall of Fame skin line, even that would be so cool. And I'm putting this out there just because, not because I have any insight into it, but it's like, damn, who doesn't want to play the Uzi Vayne skin, right? Like that to me would be so cool.
Yeah, I mean, we have prestige skins. We should have like legend, the legend line or something that's literally reserved for Uzi, Faker, these types of players.
Great.
And I completely agree. And I nominate Vayne for the first of the legend skins to really commemorate Uzi. And even though he did not win Worlds, he did make World Finals 2 times. He won those back-to-back LPL championships. It had been such a long time for him to even get LPL championships. So that was a huge story last couple of years. And then, of course, he also won MSI. So at least he did end up winning this big international competition in MSI. Mm-hmm. And I'm very glad that he does have trophies to look back on, because that's the biggest debate, right? So all these people, it had always been a conversation. Uzi is extremely rich, extremely well off. Like a lot of these really strong Chinese players, there's so much money over there in streaming that everyone's always like, why don't you just stream? It's way less work, way less stressful on your body. You get paid just all over the place for it. And Uzi is always been such a competitor. He always, he was missing the world's trophy, but I think that it's very interesting that he and cool that he came to terms with putting his health first and being okay with this big legacy that he is going to lead, even though it doesn't have the crown jewel.
Yeah, and I don't think anyone will actually hold that against him, though. I know this is often the kind of thing people hear about in sports when there's Hall of Fame discussions and ranking players and stuff. It's like, well, he never won the big one. But I think it's important to realize in League of Legends, like what kind of eras we went through in terms of like the period of Korean dominance. He was the only person challenging them, those Korean teams when that was going on. And then once China finally, caught up as a scene, then like players like the Shy and other people, Jackie Love might have surpassed him, but he was also competitive during that time, which I think is really crazy. And this also applies to Faker, obviously, but like there's not many players who were competing at that level for so long.
I think as much as people aren't going to hold it against him that he didn't win Worlds for now, if we're talking about, the greatest AD of all time in 10 years and, Jackie Love wins 3 more Worlds in the next 10 years, then that does get held against you, right? That does become something where it's like, well, he couldn't do it, right? And I do think that it's relevant in your long-term legacy. But to your point, you have to consider the competition and the kind of global stage, right? Throughout most of his career, no one could compete with Korea. Things have changed. The LPL has developed, and now that is kind of no longer the same reality, which is why I am kind of sad to see him retire. I think that he was now entering this era where he could compete and where, they won MSI and they were like favorites going into Worlds that year and where he could have got that title. And I think it's sad. I think it's sad that a 23-year-old man is having to retire due to health issues. And to me, that is something that can be used to shine a light on how important this is to take care of your body as a pro gamer. Uzi had an 8-year career. I was a pro gamer for 7 years, and my body was really hurt by it. Like as you guys know, I've done a lot of physical therapy over the last couple of years.
Got that little wrist ball on your desk you're always doing this with.
Like to deal with neck problems, to deal with back problems, to deal with wrist issues. I have a standing desk. I use wrist wraps. I do exercises, and this is something that I never thought about once during my pro gaming career. And kids are not going to think about that. You are not going to think about it until you already have those issues. And it is massively harder to correct the issues once you already have them than it is to prevent those things from becoming issues, using preventative care and stretching and things, commonly throughout that. So I do hope that his story can help to amplify that message. I know it is becoming a much bigger thing in pro gaming today, but whether you're a pro gamer on an official team of trainers or you're just someone who loves to play games, you need to take care of your health. right? The fact that someone who's 23-year-olds has to retire due to health issues, he has his entire life ahead of him, right? How is that going to look, in 20, 40, 60 years if he cannot correct that, right? And that is why I think it's so important for everyone who is really involved in gaming to be taking care of themselves and to be making, the healthcare just as much a priority as getting good at the game and playing the game itself.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of journalists, even tagging organizations that have been reaching out and showing support for Uzi and, saluting as well. Take note of the reason that he is retiring, because this is going to be an issue indefinitely. The extreme training regimen that anyone's going to go through to be the best in the world at probably anything is going to hit levels that are not healthy, because you're trying to be the best in the world and everyone wants to put in the most work in the world. So ergonomic setups, in addition to, dieting and exercise, all of these things are going to be incredibly important and should be wrapped in there. Yeah.
I mean, that's definitely a hopeful part of his legacy that people will adapt to. But I think there's a lot of other parts to his legacy too. I think when you hear about people talk about Uzi, it feels like he inspired like the second generation of marksman players a lot of the time around the world. Like everyone wanted to be Uzi's vein. I think every single person
I'll take any of his champions.
When you I just mean like when you picked Vayne, what the highlight montage you saw in your head. Yeah, exactly.
Because the important part, Uzi was so good at the game, but he looked so cool while he was being good at the game. There's ways to win where, people have had debates. Yes, the perfect game will be all macro. You out-rotate your opponents. You're able to end the game without actually having to kill people. And Uzi's just like, try and stay in my lane, idiots. And try to dodge every skill shot and flashes into people. And it's just so cool, him as a player and him, even this play style that the team's at pretty much almost 100% RNG, as he was only very briefly on any other teams.
Star Home Royal Club, baby.
Yeah, but would make this raise the puppy strategy or build all of these strategies around a single player and trying to amplify and raise up a single player into this like just holy status where all your hopes and dreams are on him for one game. It really is exciting to watch, and that type of stuff is what I'm gonna definitely miss when we lose a big player like this, a big name that has so much emotion and story that goes along with anything he does in the game. That's where we start to like, oh my goodness, are we gonna run out of these players? We need these more icons to step up here.
Yeah, I think I'm personally the opinion that it'll be fine. Like already in the Chinese scene, you have players like Jackie Love, The Shy, Knight, other people who are beginning their legacy, whereas Uzi's was kind of ending. So I think people will always step up.
Yeah, I want to try and inject some hype into that as well, because last year Uzi said Jackie Love is the only AD carry player that is better than him. So if you get a little bit of like passing the baton, and if you are interested in LPL AD carry play, I think that is an easy one to jump to. I will caution everyone who doesn't pay attention to it closely, though. That's a completely different style. I was talking about the raise the puppy thing for Uzi, the whole team play around him. That's not what teams have done with Jackie Love, and part of the extremely impressive play that Jackie Love brings to the team, to me, has been his play when they don't give him any resources at all, or they give him little resources, and he still plays these fights extremely well.
I mean, I think one of the things that is so exciting about Uzi is it's like, there's a reason that he could do these different styles, and that's because he always won lane, right? It's this guy that I think is probably the greatest laner of all time. He was so consistently dominant, across his entire career, and some of the stats that come out of the LPL aren't always the most accurate. We don't have an internal database that I'm pulling this from. So I was trying to look up some stuff online to kind of put it into perspective. But like his average CSD for his entire career was plus 12.8. This is like over 500 games. Like his CSD of 15, he's almost up a CS a minute. That is insane. He was ahead in farm, over 77% of the time at 15, right? This is having losing matchups. This is having, defensive metas. No matter what it was, this guy was going to beat you in lane. And I think that, that is the reason he could go for this explosive play style, because most of the other players, even when they are incredible players, great players at the top of their game, they don't consistently dominate when it comes to the international level. He was one of the only guys that it felt like he would crush you in lane, and then he's like, oh, you're going to play a macro game? That's cute. I'll just pentakill your ass and end it, right? And it's like, he's so unique because of that. Like one of my kind of great associations with Uzi is also how he played Ezreal and like how good he was at Ezreal too. Because I always kind of like initially had seen it as more, okay, this is like the safety pick and you're just going to sit back and you're going to farm with your Q from max range. And he's like, well, what if I stood past the minions and just Q'd you and never missed? then you can't lane anymore. And it's like, wait, you could do that? Like you could just slam your opponent every game on Ezreal?
I think some of my favorite Uzi memories are the season 4. I think it was the semifinals. Like Twitch was kind of meta. This is like lane swap era. You would take Twitch and put him in the 2v1 to kind of like get ISO XP and like level him up quick. And then I don't know, there's a whole bunch of macro stuff you would do, but it would basically result in your AD carry being like a solo laner. And they were getting crushed. I can't remember who they were playing, but they were getting crushed. And like it basically just turned into like Uzi roaming around the map on Twitch and popping out and murking people. And he did it enough until he like just clawed his team back into the game basically by himself. I think this was like Juggernaut Lulu era too, so he had a lot of those kind of games. But yeah, just seeing him like unload on people, get picks, and pull his team basically 1v9 back into a game was insane to watch.
I'm going to pull up my boomer status here and say mine is his Vayne versus Samsung in 2014. I had to double check the date.
Blue buff.
It's been so long. But it's that he does this against the best players in the world. It's so crazy when you have like, that's why we say that there is this tier of players where you can look at YouTube highlight reels and streamers will make those in normal games where they're like silver to challenger climbs. Oh, this is what content, what everyone wants to see. Everyone loves big outplays like that. And Uzi's like, yes, look at mine from playing against one of the best teams in the entire world on the world stage with the most pressure.
Unranked to challenger streams kind of pale in comparison when you're like, what are those nameplates?
Yeah.
Bob 27? Yeah. Okay.
I was actually watching, and I encourage you guys to as well. I watched a montage. It was Uzi like career highlights. It's actually on his own YouTube channel. At least I think it is him because it's verified. But you guys can Google it, just Uzi official YouTube, and you'll find it. And it's a montage of his career and kind of like some of his most, iconic moments, this Vayne game that you're talking about. There was one that really stood out to me, and it's this pentakill mid lane against IG, where it's just like, he just does everything so damn well. He's rolling aggressively. He's dodging all these skill shots. He's flashing the J4 ultimate, and he has a sliver of health, and he has the presence of mind to change targets from this J4 that he's just flashed away from after killing a Lucian under a turret, and condemn a Gragas into a wall as he Qs so that he can't detonate his barrel, which would have killed him, and then swapping immediately back to the J4, killing him while getting out of range of that barrel, and then kiting out and killing the Gragas, chasing him into the turret and killing him, right? And it's like just the level of mechanics and decision making. It's like at that point you're no longer even like making decisions. It's like instinctual, right? You can't teach that. Like
Ultra
that is
instinct,
just
baby.
Yeah, like he's just going into beast mode and just doing everything, and it's like he's just seeing ones and zeros, but like and it's just like in some of those moments you're just like, what the hell? Like, how did you do that? And that is the guy, like that is the marksman player that I have had the most moments with, where you've seen so many of these moments where you'd be watching an RNG game and they're down in these situations where you're just like, they're probably screwed, right? They shouldn't win this game. But because they have Uzi and because he would always have like 12, 14 CS per minute, you're like, but maybe, but maybe he could do it. And you kind of always had that in the back of your mind that like Uzi could just turn on and just end the game by himself sometimes.
So I kind of want to turn it from gushing about Uzi to
Really? I wasn't done.
Yeah,
just kidding.
just proposing something
All right,
here because I think this is a super interesting topic that I've thought about a lot actually, and terminology in our game always gets really muddied because you don't have specific terms. So when you come up with exactly what you're thinking, you try and use a term, it doesn't necessarily one for one transfer over to other people, even when they're using the same term and they think they're talking about the same
Rotations
thing.
and translations.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good example. Even Uzi's name is actually a super funny
Uzi
example.
I.
As I, by the way, when I went to speak to him in person and talk to him, he actually said he didn't care which was the pronunciation. Anyways, mechanics I think is a really interesting one because a lot of the times, and you alluded to this, Azael, people bundle in your instinctual or your very quick decision making within a fight of deciding, not just the mechanics of the physical ability to move this quickly and get this play off, but coming up with that play and thinking. And it always comes down to me. I'm so impressed with these players that think very, very far ahead about what their opponent wants to do. And it makes it look like they just have this extra godly level of play
They got 'em downloaded.
because in this downloaded term, like from the fighting game community that they use, I think that is so impressive. And I think that's something that's bundled in with mechanics that sometimes should be separated because it's just this. And I'm the same way where I'm like, I can't learn that. Like, I can't learn to have the instincts or like think that fast to be able to, predict as much as whatever my opponent is going to do and pull off the counterplay.
Like I get the omega-3 fish oils or whatever those brain supplements are.
Zale has some of those on his desk, by the way. I saw.
Start taking them.
And I was like, how? World champion.
Returning to the thing about like the instinct part, it was the Shy, I think, who had an interview where he talked about like, he's like, I don't think I'm a great mechanical player as much as I am a smart player. He thinks he's a smarter player than he's mechanical. He's like, I've already thought about what I want to do so many times that like, that's the harder part. And like, that's what makes me so great is I know what I can do better than you can. And then I do it.
That's what I always try and bring up when people talk about, all right, I want to go practice my, combos versus bots or dummies or whatever. And I'm like, okay. I mean, that's good to be able to get, like I'm talking about, the literal physical movements of muscle memory. Muscle memory goes a long way. Yeah, execution, part of mechanics goes a long way to be able to do that very quickly. But the next level of the basically planning your fight with this person and pulling it off, I think is really cool.
You need the total package to be able to pull off, these incredible plays that he has, right? There's no way that in the midst of the fight, you can see the Gragas press his Q and then go to stun him and then do all these things. Right?
Yeah, your brain can't think consciously like that.
Your brain can't.
You have to really have been a couple of steps ahead to where it's like, every champion, everything they could do, and you have now intuited or deciphered what you think their best movement would be and then reacted to that or prepared yourself to react to that, right? It's often like with things like for example, when people like flash a skill shot that comes like out of nowhere, oftentimes it's because they are anticipating that's going to happen and they are ready to do it, right? And a lot of the game is anticipation. A lot of the best plays are anticipation. Predicting a flash, for example, right? That's not actually reaction. You're doing it in anticipation of where they are going to be. And I think that oftentimes these are some of the greatest plays is when they have essentially figured out exactly what you were going to do before you did it and pre-planned their actions to stop that. And I think that is such a cool part of the game. And it's so friggin' hard to do in a team fight too. Like in a 1v1 situation, it's more approachable, at least, for more players to be able to kind of be like, okay, you're going to do this and I'm going to do that and then I'm going to stop it. But when there's 5 players and all these variables, and then you have to think about what all your teammates are going to do in response to that, so you don't overlap, kind of defensives and waste things. It gets so complex. And that's why it's so fun to watch when people pull it off at the top level. Like watching his montage, a lot of these clips were just giving me chills because it's like, it doesn't matter that they're 5-year-old clips. You can see the same things. You can see the same incredible movements and plays that will always resonate with League fans.
I mean, that's what's kind of funny about like League getting updated graphics is it's kind of like watching old fuzzy like basketball montage for me where I'm like, oh my God, Will
240p.
Chamberlain's so sick, you know? And it's like, that's what it feels like. You're going to watch these old, ugly ass Summoner's Rift videos where
And then I'm like, wait, that was only
triangle-
6 years ago?
triangle feet in Italy coming out of the brush, you know? Like, it's gonna be great.
He had a lot of old Tristana highlights, and Seeker like lot
when she gets fast attack speed.
It looks so terrible.
I have a hopeful end question. I don't know if we're at the end already, if there's more you guys want to talk about, but what do you guys think the chance is that this is a not permanent retirement? Because this does happen in video games more frequently than I feel like traditional sports, where someone retires but then comes back in a year or two. And since it's health related, and presumably he could get healthier again, right?
Yeah. I actually do think there's a low chance that he comes back, even though I'm pretty confident that he'll be able to solve his health issues with the amount of attention and resources that he has to put into that and time now. But I actually do think it's a fairly low chance that he does make a big push to come back, because if he's going to take this big break and take a lot of this time off and focus on health, that the only thing that would bring him back would obviously be to win the world championship and get to the very peak again. And in order to do that, I think he would have to go through so much. And unless he gets like so bored with everything else that he could possibly do in life, as he is completely set up to do whatever he wants, by the way, like unless that happens, I don't see him coming back. There is a chance of that because he's an extremely competitive person, and but I don't think it's a high chance,
right? So I do think it's possible. I'm with you. Like heart says, oh yeah, he's coming back. You know, head says probably maybe not. But I do think that there are, you know, he took some breaks here and there, but you're never truly on like a full break, right? You know, maybe with, you know, a solid full year of like physical therapy and working on things and trying to get his health together. I don't know. I honestly don't know a lot about diabetes and how easy it is to get those sorts of things under control. But if you can, you know, dedicate some time and get your health to a more manageable level where you're comfortable again and you can start playing again, then hey, you know, when he's 24 or 25, you can come back, right? Like there are 30-year-old players now. There are guys who are playing much longer than that. He clearly is such a generational talent that I believe he would be capable of you know, getting back to his level if he wanted to. So I'm hopeful, but I think you know, he's right to focus on his health, because you're a 23-year-old guy. You need to be able to, you only get one body, right? You need to take care of it and get your health self under control, so that when he's 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, you know, he is living comfortably and not in constant pain, right? And I think that is, you know, it's a level of maturity, I think, from someone that young to recognize how important it is to take care of himself and to prioritize that, because we all know how bad he wants to win, right? That is why he has stayed around, and that is why he has, you know, driven himself so hard, which has contributed to some of these issues. You know, when you're training, you know, 14, 16 hours a day, every day. So I'm hopeful, but I don't know. I don't know if he's going to.
I had one last little thought. Through all meta changes, I've always been able to point to RNG and Uzi and be like, yeah, if you want to, you can still do 80 carry centric.
He was the ultimate defense against whining 80 carries.
Yeah. I mean, you can always, like,
You know,
as much as meta changes, like, you know, our RNG, it make it look pretty good. Are we losing the biggest spokesperson, the biggest example that you can point to for success of a very iconic strategy? I'm not scared that, and I don't think that it's even possible to ever like nerf that out of viability. But I do think it's interesting that, you know, that's always the one that we point to where we're like, oh, you know, what are Team Liquid or Double Lift doing with, you know, this play around 80 carry thing? We're like, works for them.
I mean, one thing I'll say is times change, man. Like, how many centers dominate the NBA these days compared to the earlier parts of NBA's history? So, like, it could be the kind of thing where AD carries go from, because back in his heyday, like, AD carries were nuts. They were at 3-4 items, like whole game revolves around them. Juggernaut was a thing for a reason. Like all these things happened. And they have been nerfed over time, and it might just be the kind of thing where they're more like top laners and junglers and supports now, where the whole team really matters.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so worried about kind of like losing that identity, because I do think other players, will be able to step into this role. There's such talented players out there, but he is so unique, and he is kind of the example, right? The prototypical example of that carry marksman style, where they always, throughout all the metas, as you say, throughout all the years, have known that if you dedicate enough resources to this player, he can win you games, right? And that has always been RNG's bread and butter. And I think it's, been pretty incredible to see. One also other little tidbit that I actually read from Emily Rand is that this is the final player still playing from LPL's inaugural season. So he was the final guy hanging on there. Obviously very hard to stay relevant as a pro at the top level for 8 years, especially in China, where there's such an immense talent pool. There are so many players playing the game and coming up and hungry for your spots. LPL is expanding with teams. They're going up to like 20 teams. They're going to have 20, challenger teams, essentially the semi-pro league. That's 40 teams of players, and all of these servers who are constantly hunting for your job, or constantly hungry to improve. And it has been incredible to see that, he was that final guy that was kind of hanging on. I think it's pretty amazing.
I mean, he's an absolute icon. He's the paragon of AD carry. That's what AD carry players strive to be, is Uzi. So unless you have anything to add, I think that might do it for this episode of The Dive. Uzi, competitive league will never be the same without you, but everyone else can tune in next week for another episode of The Dive. We're going to preview the start of the LCS summer split is almost here.